Welcome to Dyed Green. I'm Kate McCabe.
And I'm Max Sussman.
Our guest on today's show is Reggie White.
I'll just come right out and say it. I'm really excited about today's show because I love pizza. I'm a pizza chef. I've loved making pizza. I've been doing it for many, many years. And our guest on today's show is someone who I really admire in the pizza world and has also been doing it for many, many years. And so personally, it was a lot of fun to chat with him about all things pizza and to just really learn about his journey and how he ended up where he is, which is the chef owner of Reggies in Dublin, one of Ireland's most anticipated and exciting pizza-focused restaurants that's open right now.
So today's conversation obviously is something that is near and dear to your heart. As a longtime pizza chef, I kind of let you take the lead in terms of asking the questions, because this is really like at least part of your heart and soul is made up of pizza. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was a really great interview. And one of the things that I found really interesting in this conversation was when Reggie talked about how he approached his restaurant and the kind of pizza that he makes and how he runs his restaurant and makes his pizza is from a perspective of someone who has worked in kitchens and then opened a pizza restaurant, and how important he feels that is both to his success and to kind of the quality of the pizza that he makes and the experience he provides.
Yeah, and I loved this interview because honestly, it was inspiring hearing him talk about his approach. I feel like we are very fortunate, and all the people that we interview are passionate about what they do, but in the broader industry, it's not always easy to find people that are able to do what they love and are able to share that throughout all levels of what they're working on. It can be really hard. It's a tough industry. It's really challenging. It can wear you down. And I love talking to him because every time we ask him, like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? He's like, well, because that's how I really love to do it. And that is how I'm thinking about it from day one. That's how he picks his flour. That's how he writes the menu. That's how he decides how to hire and how to manage and all these things.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting too when you talk about sourcing for pizza. You know, I don't know if we're still living through like the rise of pizza or the rise of pizza chefs. I think pizza has always been a really popular thing to eat, and it's becoming even more a part of the kind of celebrated food canon, if you will, mm-hmm. of like really highly regarded and accomplished chefs. It's no longer seen as just kind of like a cheap thing to make and to eat, but it is being recognized more and more for something that you actually need to have real skills in order to do well and to make taste delicious. However, at the same time, there does seem to be a little bit of a pull towards certain people or towards this idea that there is like a right way and a wrong way to make pizza, including the use of certain ingredients from certain places. Like, oh, well, if you're really making the best pizza, you have to use 00 flour from this place, or all your flour has to be imported from Italy, or this, that, and the other thing. And so I thought it was really refreshing to hear Reggie's take, why he uses the ingredients he uses, and then especially, you know, when he was talking about cheese also. Someone was saying something about a certain kind of cheese that they get imported from Italy, and he was saying, well, you know, the milk in my cheese was in a cow in Cork 36 hours ago. I love that.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, it's very quintessentially Dyed Green kind of conversation because it takes something that, you know, you might be familiar with from another part of the world or another way of doing it, and really just focuses on like what it means to be doing it in Ireland, celebrating Irish ingredients and doing it in your own way. So great conversation, and we would be remiss not to mention that this is the 49th episode of Dyed Green, which means we're about to
turn 50, the big 50. We're about to have our midlife crisis.
Can't you tell?
We're going to have a really big giveaway for our next episode, though.
Yeah, so thank you all for just being with us and listening to every episode and sharing it with your friends and writing us these
adding it to your syllabi
and following. We appreciate it so much, and we'll see you next time for episode 50, so stay tuned. Well, thanks for making the time, and thanks for coming on Dyed Green. We're excited to talk to you.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I've this is my podcast debut, so
All
Oh,
no
right.
idea what to
amazing.
expect, but I enjoy what you guys do. So I figured as good as anyone to pop my cherry.
Well, congratulations on your new restaurant. I've heard really good things.
Thanks very much. Probably from friends of mine. People thinking nice about me. Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks.
important.
It's going great. Thank God. It's going. I hoped it would do well, but I guess at this point in time, it's probably going like I won't say better than expected, but I didn't expect maybe to be this early. You're always fighting fires, but it certainly feels like I've got a level of stability already, which is great. I was talking to a friend of mine was in the restaurant a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, people are feeling rushed at their tables, and pizzas are arriving too quick after snacks, and we missed a wine delivery and all these sort of things. And he was like, "Hey, you have customers. It's the only problem you can't fix." He's like, "Relax,
Absolutely.
everything will get there in the end." And I think I do have like the personality type that I want to fix things. I'm not going to be like, "This is great. I'm off to Lanzarote." It's like I do. I'll iron them out, but it's I keep the phrase I keep saying is "feather by feather, the goose was plucked." So we get there.
So I feel like the restaurants seems like a culmination of work that you've been doing and stuff that you've been leading up to. I'd love to hear more about the idea for Reggie's, and is it something that you always pictured in the way that it turned out? Was it something that you always pictured, or did your ideal restaurant change over time? And how did it end up becoming what it is and what it is now?
Yes to all of the above, and no to all the above. I suppose I kind of go back. So I was always kind of when I was a youngster, when I was in school and stuff like that. I wasn't like I never had a problem with work, but I didn't find. I don't like to be too revisionist about the whole thing and be like, "Oh, it just didn't suit me." But I really did struggle in school, and it wasn't that I wasn't bright. I don't think I'm like very bright, but I'm not stupid, and I certainly felt stupid in school. And as a consequence, I kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do in college and ended up not doing anything in college. And then for about a 2 year period, I was like a real estate agent, like, selling houses and apartments and residential lettings. And then I single handedly caused the financial crisis. So I left. And after that, I was kind of fluting around. I thought I might get into radio. I thought I might do this and do that. And a friend of mine, Paddy O'Connell, who is a nephew of the famous Dorina Alum, he sat outside my house one day in his little Fiat Punto in the driving rain, like the windows all steamed up, and he was like, "You have to do it." He's telling me to go down to Ballymaloe. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I could go to DIT next year." And he was like, "No, go to Ballymaloe. There's a course starting next week. I'll see if I can get you on." And then I went out because not much interested me. It was not that I had no interest, but I mean, I wasn't going to be a pro golfer playing off 20 handicaps. So I needed to find something that I could do and earn a living from. And then I had decided I was going to go down the food route, and he convinced me to go to Ballymaloe. And after that, well, probably was a while after that I realized what I really enjoyed about food was not necessarily perfectionism, it's hospitality. Like I enjoy bringing people together and putting food in front of them, not necessarily canals and perfect jus and reductions and all that sort of stuff. So, where am I going with all this? So, I found when I was down in Ballymaloe, I learned how to make. Well, I don't say I learned how to make pizzas, but I made some pizzas, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like we lit a fire, used our hands, and we baked food in like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and I was like, "This is really cool that you can do this. This is real live action food," and that kind of stuck with me. And then after that, I had a couple of I went and worked in a cafe for a while, and then I was like, right, well, if I want to progress, I got to work in like a proper restaurant. And I went and worked actually went and worked in San Francisco for 3 months, and then I came back, and then I worked in another restaurant for 9 or 10 months, and then another restaurant for 3 or 4 months, and I was just like, actually, this is not what brings me joy. Like baggy chef pants and chef whites and pinstripe aprons wasn't necessarily what excited me. And I had been saying for a long time, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do pizza. I'm going to do pizza. I'm going to open a pizzeria." And my brother, who's a restaurateur in San Francisco, he was like, "Why are you talking about it?" He was like, "Come out here and we'll show you how to make pizza." He had a restaurant in San Francisco. So I came over there and did 3 months on the pizza oven in Flour and Water. And when came back after that and I was like, right, now it's time to open something. But that was 2014. That's 11 years ago.
Mm.
And I had lots of, you kind of mature over time. Like even like 11 years ago, I was 29. It's not like I was young, but I, you have all these crazy ideas and then you need to spend time around restaurants and hospitality before you realize that's a bit gimmicky or that wouldn't work or that wouldn't sell. And it all these different ideas. Now I'm cramming a lot of time into a very short period of time here, but
I
then
realize now my question was a little open ended, so
yeah.
this is a good backgrounder though.
So anyway, so then I had an idea that I wanted to open something like single product. Like, you're familiar with Bunsen here, the burger
Hmm.
place, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think I could do something like that with pizzas, and I linked up with someone else, and we opened Pie in Georgia Street, and that was a great success, but it just wasn't the right fit for me, so I stepped away from that after just a little under a year. I decided I wanted to leave, and we've kind of caught up to now 2019, and then I was going to open something for the Forest Ave with the Forest Avenue guys out in Blackrock and Little Forest. And sorry, all of this rambling on is to say that I started off thinking I was going to have like loads of stuff in a restaurant. Then I said, actually, no, I just want to do a single product and try and scale it. And then after coming away from the single product, we're just doing the same thing over and over again. I was like, this isn't what brings me joy. What I am interested in is bringing people into a space, having them sit down, relax, enjoy themselves, say, God, that was a lovely experience. The food was great, the wine was great, all that sort of stuff. The hospitality was great. So once upon a time, I thought I wanted something to burn and turn, but now I'm like, and I really made a conscious effort when I was looking for this property to go to a neighborhood. I didn't want to be in town and, having security on the door on a Saturday night and washing sick
Mm.
off the doorstep in the morning. I wanted to have something where you'd see the same faces over and over again. And then menu wise, I wanted to do something that people would come back for 3 or 4 times a month, not once every 6 months or once a year. So it was about trying to kind of execute some classics as well as we could. And yeah, just trying to create, like, it's funny, you guys would be very familiar with it, but I was talking to someone here and he was like, yeah, no, I really feel Rathmines is missing that kind of American family restaurant. And I was like, that's actually exactly what it is. They're two a penny in the States. They don't really exist in Dublin. So you've
Mm.
either got like, a chain, like, and I mean like a corporate chain that does like burgers and pizzas and fries and all that sort of stuff, or you've got something singular that just does one thing, or you've got a neighborhood restaurant that does, pork chops and scallops and stuff like that. So just trying to deliver a kind of a neighborhood restaurant that's accessible all year round.
Yeah, I mean the menu reads as something that's like very focused, but also very welcoming and interesting at the same time. Like it has a personality, but it doesn't seem so out there type of personality that's like,
Yeah, for sure.
it
And
makes you want to come in and come back.
yeah, and the thing about it is, like, I'm very fortunate. I got some really talented chefs, like totally overskilled for a pizzeria, and I could push it as far as I want nearly with them, but that's not the point. I really keep coming back to the restaurant is for the guests. It's not for my ego or for the chef's egos. And thankfully, they don't have any egos. But it's not like I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I try and prove things with my pizza that I really care about it, but beyond that, I don't need to be off foraging in the mountains for seps, and I just want to deliver a great experience, 8, 10 times a year for someone,
Yeah, that's great.
and
So,
and we don't take
yeah,
shortcuts on anything.
yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, how does the pizza that you serve reflect all of the experience that you've had learning pizza from different places, different traditions, and how have you turned that into something that's your own style?
Well, I suppose I definitely in the early days I was definitely trying to replicate something like when I opened Pie. I definitely was like heavily influenced by places like Roberta's, by Paulie G's, the places that were kind of flying in the mid 2010s, that kind of stuff. But I learned pretty quickly as soon as you say you're doing something, someone's going to tell you you're not. So then I stopped trying to emulate people and started trying to figure stuff out, because I don't know if you ever do any deep diving on pizza online, but you'll just see it's all the same questions and all the same answers in all the forums, and no one really wants to figure it out. And it's just people telling you the same flours, what you need to use, and the same ovens, what you need to use, and the same. And I just when I left by, I kind of I felt like I had something to prove to myself, so I changed every single component when I went into Little Forest, and I tried a bunch of flowers, and I changed the oven temperature, and I changed tomatoes. We were using virtually every single component, the hydration, the salt content, changed everything, added some wholemeal, kept playing around, and I started to really learn about what happens when you do X, Y, or Z. And through that evolution, and also I do some consulting for other pizza places, and I was determined to not have a cookie cutter approach. I didn't want to just like I didn't want to shortchange anyone. So each environment I went into, I was like, well, what are you trying to achieve here? Do you want it to be fast? Do you want to do 50 pizzas? Do you want to do 300 pizzas? Do you want a bit of wholemeal? Do you want to, and I worked it out. And then consequently, I rolled out, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 different pizza recipes for different businesses that worked for their skill set and their volume and their kind of week in terms of, were they busy all week or did they just do a Saturday, Sunday? So yeah, so the short answer to that is that I've started, or where I'm at right now is I say, how do I make the best possible dough I can, and how can I put the best possible toppings on it I can, and how do I do the best job I can of baking it, and that's basically my style. So it's not, I'm not, yeah, I'm not trying to emulate anything I've seen. I suppose funny thing is I've never had pizza in New York, but I suppose it's probably closely related to a New York pizza. Like it's crispy, it's a bit darker, but
Yeah.
it's not. I'm certainly not, on Instagram trying to
Yeah.
copy what I see in other places. Although there are some that I wish I could do.
Yeah, it's interesting that evolution's. I mean, I'll just be. It's really interesting to me personally because I worked at Roberta's and I came from that tradition as well, and I also make pizza, and I've also kind of been working on developing what you might call my own style over the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
and finding that like what I like isn't necessarily copying directly what other people are doing, and I feel like that's how, but that's how those places came up with their own style as well, was saying, all right, there is some authentic thing that we're, that we can work towards, but the most important thing is to do what you think ends up with the best
Yeah,
product because you're the one handling it and you're the one serving it and you have to stand behind it. And yeah.
yeah. I had some guy come in a couple of weeks ago now and tell us that the pizza was wrong. And I was like, this is all wrong. He was like, it's too crispy and it's too something else. And I was like, based on what?
Yeah.
I was like, that's like coming in and telling me my living room's painted the wrong color. Like it's so arbitrary. But
Right.
it.
Is this someone
It's
who had
funny.
like eaten at all the best,
Yeah,
Neapolitan places or
the
all around the world and all that? Yeah.
yeah. I hate that. But it's funny. There's certain things bring out the best and the worst in people. Like I have people come up to me like, I'm just after getting an uni or a Gosney, and oh, it's so much fun, and we do 'em with the kids, and could you give me some tips? And then it's great. And then you have someone else who's like,
Mm.
yeah, I actually got an uni during lockdown. Uh, my friends now say mine are pretty good, and they kind of just like, and then they're like, oh, and they kind of start to lecture you, and it's like, I made like a couple of 100,000 pizzas. I can look at a picture of your dough and probably tell you the recipe and tell you like how long it was made for and everything. It's kind of, there's a lot of things like that. A big thing I come back to, I always say, pizza belongs to the. This sounds a bit like spoofy here, but like pizza belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to me and my ego and oh well I use this flour and I use this cheese and it's this local and it's this and it belongs to like me and only my ego, and if you don't understand it, that's your problem and you miss out. And I feel it's the same with coffee, with wine, with beer, and people just want to drink a delicious beer or a delicious glass of wine. And when you have an expert som and they bring you a glass of wine, they don't make you feel little like someone like me who really has a poor level of knowledge about wine, and they just give you a great experience. Like, Jesus, that wine was delicious, and you don't know anything. You don't have to necessarily know where it came from, or any of that. It's funny. I said I was talking to Colin who owns 3FE, and I said like nobody cares that it's this flour. Nobody cares that it's it takes 2 days, or nobody cares. And he goes, yeah, but they care that you care. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, well that's fair. So
And they care about what that ends up resulting in. Like,
yeah,
they don't have to
exactly.
know all that, but when they take a bite, there is something that happens that doesn't happen when people take a bite somewhere else. And I think that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to just make a comment to say that Max also will look at a pizza on Instagram and be able to diagnose like what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
So that's
Pretty
kind of funny that
quickly.
you say that. Yeah, and I wanted to ask a question, which is, I'm not a pizza chef, but I eat a lot of pizza. But this is maybe a rookie question. How much of an impact do you think water has on the pizza that you make? Because people are always talking about, like, New York pizza is the best pizza, but also New York bagels are the best bagels. And I don't know if this is a myth, but people always say, oh, it's like the quality of the New York water. So if you have pizza in California, it's going to be kind of soft and it's not going to be as good because the water is different. Is that something that you have an opinion on?
Well, I want the mob showing up at my door now telling me that I've saying something bad about New York water. But, like, in simple terms, the New York water does have some sort of material impact on the dough. I don't know what that is, but water, like, I always say everything changes everything. But I would say it's, someone said something to me about this before, that it's typically quite cold. Generally, colder doughs come out crisper. So possibly that was, I don't know. I don't know anything about the composition. I've heard it for years, and I've heard about people flying buckets of it out to Pizza Expo and to the World Pizza Championships and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, the water in Rathmines is different to my house, which is, 2 kilometers away from here. So I can't imagine that. I don't know how far Una Pizza is from Roberta's, but I imagine they probably have different water, so they can't say. What I will say, though, is I installed a carbon water filter here for my pizza dough, so I have a super consistent product, because it's definitely overlooked as an ingredient. So I have a clever little tap just beside my mixer, which is like separate to the hand wash tap, and it's carbon filtered, so that I basically get really good water for my pizza dough. And I definitely have found, it's hard to describe, but I definitely have found the performance has been better, and I get a different outcome with higher hydration. Like, I still maintain structure, whereas sometimes when I up the hydration, it just kind of gets loose and collapses. So yeah, so I guess water is important to me, but I can't speak to what the water of New York is like.
It's really interesting.
But I would be skeptical.
A lot of people will say, like, when you make pizza in a professional setting, like, draw your water and then put it in the fridge overnight, and because there's like an off-gassing that happens. And I know in the States, at least, a lot of municipal water supplies are chlorinated. You can smell it if you put your face into like a bucket
My
of
hand
tap
wash
water.
is chlorinated. I can smell it.
And so, I mean, that's got to have an effect on,
for sure.
on
That's
the activity
like a
that's
terrible
happening.
phrase, though, to think about when you're thinking about food preparation, off-gassing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry
That's
about that.
that's straight away. I'm like, brilliant. I need to read up on this. That's like fascinating. It's interesting because there's loads of, like, another level of filtration is you can do reverse osmosis, but I've heard of people finding that it stripped too much from the water and they were losing flavor from their dough. So that's why I opted for carbon water filter instead of a reverse osmosis. And I've heard that with coffee machines and stuff as well, where they found that reverse osmosis was too much.
Yeah. I don't know whether it's like minerals or salinity or
I was
some
about
pH
to throw
used to, and yeah,
I was about to throw the word minerality out there.
We've gone there.
Pick me up on it.
We're like 20 minutes in, and we're off gassing, and we're minerality, and
Well, don't expect short answers when you're talking to me. Just ask my wife. The eyes roll back in her head when someone asks me a question. I just flick the fingers and go, "We're back. We're back."
Well, I always thought it was when people said that, oh, you can only make sourdough in San Francisco and you can only make this kind of pizza in New York or bagels. I just figured it was because that's where the people were that knew how to do that. And this is like, there didn't used to be YouTube, and people, there were regional specialties that were like located in one particular area, and it had a lot to do with the fact that that's just where the people were that knew how to make that, and they passed it down, through apprenticeships and those kind of relationships, and that ended up being like what. And then people kind of used water as a stand-in for that.
Right, because New York bagels would fit into that.
Yeah. But I do have a question about your flour. I see that you're using the Wild Farm flour, which seems like a really cool project. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how you chose it and what's it like using it and what their whole thing is, basically.
Well, don't ask me to go too far into their whole thing, but as best as I can tell you, Groove Armada? Yeah.
Yes.
So Andy Cato, who is one of the duo that founded Groove Armada, he basically sold his whole book of music, like the way the Beatles sell their book of music. He sold the rights to all of his music, and basically dumped it all into a regenerative flour mill. So they only deal with farmers who are dealing in regenerative practices. Obviously, it's all organic, etc. But it's kind of about doing what's best for the land and what's best for the environment rather than what's best for the yield. And they have a bunch of different flours. I played around with a few of them. They have a pizza flour, and they have like a T100 or a T110, a T120, a T140, all different kind of levels of milling. But where I'm at the moment, I was using their pizza flour, but I think that it's probably more suited to a higher temperature, and I'm always kind of trying to get my temperature down a bit to try and get a nice kind of even golden bake rather than just hanging and banging and cranking them out. And what I will say about it is, like, I always feel there's room for improvements on my side, but I definitely feel it is comfortably the most flavorsome dough I've ever made. Like, it's total leagues apart. It's closer to a bread, but in a good way.
Hmm.
So I found at times I've achieved a bread-like flavor from my dough, but it's not what you're after when you're going for pizza. But this is almost like kind of getting into, like, say, a baguette kind of flavor, which is really delicious. But it's a similar protein content. So I'm using the T65 primarily, which I've cut with a little bit of a different flour. But it is a similar protein content to other bread flours, but I find the quality of the protein. So, you could have two people who are 200 pounds side by side and they're both the same body mass or whatever, but one of them's just stronger than the other. So they're both the same as a bread flour. It's like 13-ish, I think, percent, but it's really strong. It's really strong. So I've been kind of playing around with the salt and playing around with other flour, just a little bit of other flours to try and take the edge off it, to try and get it a bit more crisper rather than just chewy. But it's a fabulous product. And just kind of, I always think with all of these things, like, there are certain things that just make you happy when you're going to work. I'm happy to be working with them instead of just buying
Mm.
Caputo off the boat by the 100 kilos. So it's just yeah, it just brings me a little bit of joy in my day to be working with them.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool, actually. I like the way you put that. Like, yeah, you want to go in and work with products that are making you happy because I feel like that ends up translating to your guests, I would imagine. I mean,
And you
you're
can taste it in the food.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, I just think that's kind of, it's such a miss by so many people in hospitality. Is was like an over focus on the bottom line. Never, no beautiful things happen from that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, the first thing people say, or not the first thing, but one of the first things people say about pizza is like, "Oh, there's a great margin in pizza. That's a great business to be in." But I always look at that as an opportunity to. So, say you want 30% food costs, you have so much room to play with,
Mm-hmm.
using great stuff to get up to the 30% instead of just joining the race to the bottom. It's like, whoa, these guys will send me tomatoes cheaper. Have you tasted them? No, but they're 20 quid less a case. And I was like, right, well, go ahead. And that allows me the freedom to use great cheeses, use great fresh produce, get stuff from McNally's farm, get stuff from Abercorn farm, from Andar farm. Like, we basically chose whatever we wanted in terms of quality produce, and we're hitting our margin everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So why would if the business is making money that I can pay back my investors, why would I start taking shortcuts? Why would I come in and, have the big S lorry that we know all about pulling up outside every day, delivering generic stuff? I'm much happier this way.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, that's actually a really cool approach to thinking about food cost and pizza because you're right. I think a lot of people are just like, yeah, well, you could just slap like an ounce of cheese on there and, sell it for this much and no one's going to know the difference. But obviously, like, we're at a point where there are people that, first of all, it's if your own approach doesn't like want you to let yourself do that. But I think people also can tell the difference now when they're eating it. And it's, you have access to a market of people that are going to be very excited about what you're doing. And that counts for a lot too. Because I think people probably love to see all these different farms. Obviously, you love to do it, but I think there's enough people out there that love to see all that happening on the menu and in the restaurant, right?
Yeah, it's kind of one of my one-liners. I'm always like, do you want to know my secret? I use nicer shit. It's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
so simple. It's like the easiest win you can have is getting nicer tomatoes and getting nicer cheese. But it's so. There's also a lot of back to what I was saying about you go online and you find the same questions and the same answers all the time in pizza. No one ever takes the time. Like, I think I'm fortunate that I started in kitchens first, as opposed
Hmm.
to, I'm sure you're familiar, a lot of pizza makers have only ever been pizza makers,
Hmm.
and a lot of pizza business owners have never worked in hospitality. So, you know, I would have someone drop me off a cheese and be like, "This is amazing. We just got it from Italy. It's the best. Everyone says this. Everyone says that." And then I taste it. And I'm like, "Okay, that's great. It's not as good as the stuff I get from Cork that was in a cow 36 hours ago." You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And the same with the tomatoes. Like, you'll often have reps come in and say, "Oh, we've been really excited. We've been waiting for these tomatoes to get in. We just got a container. We think they're going to be the next big thing, blah, blah, blah." And then you try them and you're like, good luck to you. They're just not as good. And I'm going to pay more for these ones because they're apples and oranges. And
It's
also,
making.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
The,
I was
the
just gonna.
tomatoes change quite a
Yeah.
lot throughout the year. So
Hmm.
sometimes you're flying and you're the best tomatoes of all time, and then you just open them one day and they taste like mandarins and they're hideous.
I was just going to say, it's making me think about how some pizza almost feels like a different kind of food than other pizza, because I think a lot of people that like pizza will eat like any and all kinds of pizza, no matter where it's from. The cheese, the sauce, the bread, it's great. But we live in a state right now where we have like the headquarters of Little Caesars and Domino's here, and we've got pizza places like all over town. But people will have pizza pretty regularly, but they'll still crave the really good stuff. And so it's like
Mm.
they taste the difference between the kind of like mass produced uniform nature of some of these global chains, and they might still like that, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to eat the kind of pizza Max might make. It's more of like an addition to their
At the
to
same
their
time, I
food.
got a 1-star review the other day saying snacks delicious, pizza worse than or Domino's better pizza. I was like, okay, don't know what I can do for you there, pal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You are
You didn't
welcome
you
to
didn't
eat
stuff the
the
crust
Dominoes. Yeah.
probably. Yeah, it's probably that.
it's like those are the ones that just kind of make you laugh. If they say something accurate and articulate, you're like, fuck, that's disappointing. But when they
Right.
say that, you're like, I can win with you. Like,
Right.
you go do you. Thanks for buying some snacks off me.
Come back for the snacks. Yeah. But I think what you're describing about the your approach to ingredients is like that is really like the kind of one of the fundamental parts of Italian cuisine is very ingredient focused and really seasonality focused and kind of how to capture each ingredient in its season and preserve it as well. And I think that it sounds really obvious when you say it like that, but a lot of what people think of as Italian food is just taking, I don't know, a recipe or the ingredients and just not really using them carefully or thinking about them. And so I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about some of the Irish products you use and how you decide what goes on the pizza, because there's a lot of folks out there that are really they're more focused on authenticity and being like it needs to be this particular ingredient from this particular region, but you're obviously a lot more flexible. So what makes you decide to put something on a pizza?
Um, so firstly, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I always, the whole thing about, as you said, as you've just said, is pizza or Italian food is about seasonality and about local. And then to people working in a pizzeria here, they're like, we need a special. Okay, let's get burrata, pistachio, and mortadella. And it's just the same stuff regurgitated, a bit of that balsamic slime. And they never think about, what's around them, or they will, instead of being investigative, they will react to something that someone has asked for and go, yeah, we're going to do a jerk chicken pizza. And it's, not winning anything. But it's hard. I don't like, how do I, I'm trying to think of like, how do I end up, I just, as I was saying, I'm fortunate that I started in kitchens before I started in pizza. And I
Mm-hmm.
always say, like, I try really hard as a pizza chef, but I don't rate myself as a chef. And I'll never get up here and be like, oh, I'm a fantastic chef. I'm quite very, very comfortable in my lane and doing what I do well. But I, you just kind of got to experiment. It's a tricky time of year because there's nothing at the moment. We had some
Mm-hmm.
spinach and we had some leeks and they're all gone now. So it's just about what comes good. Like I'm really excited for spring. There's going to be loads of great greens. I love using things like Calabrian chili and salsa verde and fresh ricotta because you can nearly with those. Well, certainly with like ricotta and with basically you can kind of interchange those things, and you could start putting anything on it. You could put squash on with ricotta and maybe a sage brown butter. You could put what else we got. I've done a bunch of times like courgettes and ricotta and salsa verde, and you can try to think of, I'm blanking now on what's coming into season now. But it's just about kind of trying to do bright flavors, trying to compose the pizza in a way that is not too much of anything. I generally always put a little bit of Fior on anyway, so I wouldn't be like all ricotta or all blue cheese or all taleggio or whatever. You always kind of cut it up with something so it's not too overpowering. But the most exciting way to cook, or the most exciting way to create, is to just see what's available and see what you can do with it, rather than trying to mandate something or trying to preempt something. And yeah, that's I don't have much more to say on
Yeah.
that.
Just go and see what's good and
I've
put it on a pizza.
I've been out of the saddle for a while. Yeah, and I always think when you make a pizza, first bite, it's either a yes or a no. Like you'd be like, yes, it's not right. Maybe some black pepper will take the edge off it, or we'll add a little edge to it. Or it's like, no, this will never work. You know, our friend Keith, he did an amazing dish back in FIA back in the day. It's like a toast with, I think, macroom, ricotta, grilled peaches, nduja. There was nduja on first, like warm, cooling nduja, and then there might have been like possibly a bit of salsa verde, and then like he'd shaved maybe hazelnuts on top, and it was just like the most indulgent slice of toast. You know, it's all like pouring out of your mouth, and there's so many amazing flavors going on. It was absolutely outrageous, and I told him I was like, I'm going to try and make that into a pizza, and I took one bite, and I was like, nope, not working. Doesn't work as a pizza. Red card, pull the plug. And then other times you'll try something, and one of the guys here did a pizza the other day with McNally's potatoes and Gabine cheese, and with something else on it as well. And again, it was a no, but it just needs one thing and it'll come good. So, yeah, just gotta keep trying. The old
textures and temperatures are like they change everything, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have some great chefs working with you, and I know that, you know, everywhere everyone's always facing the same challenges, which is like how to hire great people and keep them and build a strong team. What have you found that's worked for you as far as like bringing in folks to work with, and what's been difficult?
What I've always found has gone a long way for me is not being not going to say that word, but yeah, I don't know. Like I'm probably naively so. I always kind of, I'd say naively so. So with everything. So I had a bunch of interviews in November, December for all sorts of everyone. People were coming from all levels, and I had a lot of hopes for the business in terms of I hope it will be this and I hope it will be that and I hope the pizzas will do this. But the one thing that I could stand over firmly and say, I'm telling you this right now and I will promise it, is like, this is going to be a great place to work. I was like, you'll never be unhappy coming into work. I'll make it a great place to work. I'm not Union Square Hospitality or whatever. I'm not like, I don't know how they're perceived in your world, but it's in like, I'm not claiming to be this like industry leader employer, but I just don't ask too much of people. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it a fun place. I'm the first person to make fun of themselves. I generally think I have a good way of correcting people without being mean to them. And the whole setting the table thing, the constant gentle pressure. And I try not to ask too much of people. I expect people to have standards, but I don't, there's no 4 doubles in a week and late night followed by early morning, followed by late night, followed by early morning. I try to, because, I've done it myself, and I try to, I just want to be, I don't want to come in here and look at someone scowling at me because they're miserable and they don't want to be here. I want to be able to have fun, and I have my own, well, I won't say it's my own sense of humor. I think it's probably the kitchen sense of humor. We're all just kind of self-deprecating, I think. And yeah, I don't know. So I don't want to jinx myself here, but fortunately, I have a sensational team, and they've all been fantastic for me and with me. So come back to me in 6 months' time when I'm tearing my
Right.
hair out and everyone's gone and they're all working in Google. You know,
Well, I'm glad to hear it for now. Anyways, that's like
yeah,
because that's one of the it can be a very really difficult and demoralizing part is just being like I love what I'm doing, but I need to find enough other people that also love it to make it work right.
yeah,
But I feel like probably, I mean, I'm guessing that the way you've approached the scope of your menu, I think like it's not like a single item menu concept, but it's also like not huge. So there's a focus there, and I think that really helps a lot with like letting people know what's expected of them and not making these goals that are really unachievable, like things that are just impossible
yeah,
to do
yeah,
every
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
know
like
exactly
way
what you
too
mean.
much.
Yeah.
So that,
We're getting quite intelligent at all that sort of stuff. Like, we were making risotto for arancini Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday morning, maybe a double on Friday, and now we just come in with one of my chefs early, and he's like worked in 2 and 3 stars in Paris. Going from a 2 to a 3 star, so crazy stuff. But he's like married with 2 kids, and he's like, I just want to do a prep shift in the morning. So he comes in and lashes out the risotto. But now he's like, he does 3 batches on a Monday or 2, 3 batches on a Monday, and it goes onto a speed rack to cool. And then the next day there's kind of a portion and a pane party, and we just kind of
right.
but there's things that go on our dishes might have 2, 3 components that are done really well. Like the meatballs is a meatball, a sauce, homemade ricotta, and homemade focaccia. There's only four
Mm-hmm.
components there. You're not pulling out 15 delis full of garnish to get the tweezers out. So it's very
Yeah.
achievable once you work
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah. That's cool. So I wanted to ask about the ovens that you're using. I think I read that they're electric ovens.
Yeah, Pizza Masters.
Yeah, and so can you talk a little bit about that choice? I know you've worked in a lot of wood fires before. How'd you end up making that decision? I also personally really love those ovens, so like I get it, but I was hoping you could talk a little bit about it
Well,
for the
we can't
listeners
get
that want to nerd
yeah
out about
yeah
ovens for 5 minutes,
we
10 minutes.
we won't get into the weeds of ovens or we'll be lost for 2 weeks. So I love wood fire. I have a proper like a built a Valoriani kit in my garden. So like I have like a 110 diameter wood fired oven in my garden, which is like epic. I have a little daughter and I look forward to her having her birthday parties out there, wood fired oven for wood fired pizzas for the next however many years. But at the same time, I heard a fantastic analogy that wood fire is kind of like a unicycle. So you see someone on a unicycle, go, "Whoa, look at that! That's really cool. I wish I could do that." But you don't want to take a unicycle up into the Alps, and I'm trying to go into the Alps right now. So I need a mountain bike, and it is even when you're like, I think I'm pretty competent on the wood fired oven, and I would say more diligent than anything. So I'm not the guy if you want to do 600 pizzas in 4 hours, but if you want someone to bake them as consistently as possible for that period of time, I would rate myself in terms of I'm always, what's the word I'm looking for? Just basically caring for the oven and making sure the right composition of flame to embers to floor temp to roof temp, all that sort of stuff. But even when it's perfect, you don't get 4 or 5 perfect pizzas out of it. The one closest to
Mm-hmm.
the fire is like an 8 out of 10. The one for next away from the fire is a 10 out of 10, and then the next one's like the next two are like 2 sevens. You know what I mean? So it's imperfect fundamentally. Now they're great fun. There's great joy. There's nothing like I said. It's what it got me into it at the start to be able to take a dough ball and turn it into food in 2 3 minutes with a live fire is pretty cool. But what I want from this business is how do I make the best pizza I can over and over and over and over again. And that's why you don't see Tartine in San Francisco working with a wood fired oven. You don't see Scale Bakery working with a wood fired oven. They're like, I need consistency and perfection when I put the pizza in to try and get the same result over and over again. And I've done enough time on wood fire. I don't need to be a martyr anymore. So I decided probably 5 years ago during lockdown, I was writing a business plan and I was like, I'm done with wood fire. I'm moving on to a pizza master. So
Yeah. Yeah, with the unicycle analogy, it's like you might spend 3 years learning to ride it and you're become proficient, but then all of a sudden you realize you actually have to have train other people to ride it,
yeah,
and that's a big
yeah,
key. And that is even harder than learning to do it yourself. Is how do you actually train someone and then, say they go move on to somewhere else in a few months, and then you're right back to where you started. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I find someone like Anthony Mangieri in a pizza really inspirational. Now, he's been around a long time. Obviously, you guys probably met him a bunch of times, who knows? But I just find like there's just no way he doesn't care about every single pizza. You know what I mean? So I just find that really inspirational. And I went there a couple of times when he was in San Francisco. I just watching him work was just like really cool. And he will always inspire me, but that doesn't mean I necessarily need to go down his specific route of pizza making. But yeah.
Yeah, it's very.
I've also never been to Naples as well. Never been to New York. Well, I've been to New York, but as a kid, never been to Naples.
I mean, that's what YouTube is for, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I always say, like, the places that inspire. I won't say I've never been inspired by places in Italy, but they're not. I don't relate to them in the same way. Like the places that I look up to in the States, and it's all just from Instagram. Like Sarah Minnick's place, I find really cool. Truly Pizza.
I don't know that actually. Where are they?
Look it up. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, look it up and zoom in on his crusts.
Okay.
He's this most incredible micro blistering. I think he does a big pre-ferment or something, like a low hydration pre-ferment or something like that. I'm trying to work it out. Where else do I?
Oh yeah, I was literally about to mention Folks.
Oh, they're like,
yeah, it's beautiful.
Where's that?
In California.
It's in Costa Mesa. Is that what it's called?
Costa Mesa. Costa Mesa.
Yeah, that's just like everything. I've never seen anything on their Instagram that I didn't think was absolute paradise. And their menu as well is go.
It's simple. It's not a huge menu, and he also bakes at like a little lower temperature to get a longer bake, which
The dough balls must be huge, though, right? Like they must be nearly 400 grams, are they?
They're pretty big. I actually took. There's an online course that I took with a virtual
with no
online course. Yeah, and
I want to do that. That's on my list.
I'll send you the link. But he's the person that I actually got that. He weighs the water and then puts it uncovered in the fridge overnight to let whatever's in there get out. Yeah.
Wow.
And then it's a consistent temperature in the morning. But yeah.
Well, here's one for you. I've weighed water the night before and the night after, and there's actually a significant amount of evaporation. So if you put 10 kilos of water in, weighed out, and leave it uncovered, particularly in the fridge, because I imagine the fan probably has an impact. But there was like 600 or 700, maybe not 600 or 700 grams. There was a significant amount in weight reduction overnight. So I always cover it.
That's the fairies involved in that.
Yeah.
Whatever's happening there, I think,
Nice.
So my kind of punishable by death, the flour or the dough is always weighed out the night before here. So, or anywhere I've been involved in. So flour into the mixer, water weighed out, lid on, labeled, and then salt and water and everything all weighed out. And the levain weighed out for the night team to feed before they go home, all that sort of stuff. But it's so it's interesting that he leaves it uncovered.
So you do have a few things that are punishable by death. So at least there's some a couple things where you're
dad joke.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like everything's going great, and we're thrilled for your success. We were wondering if you could share anything that's like been, I guess, a new challenge that you've been facing that you weren't expecting. There's probably a million, but anything that comes to mind that you want to talk about, even just general restaurant operations and management stuff with the industry or with the economy right now. But it's always.
What do you think? Trying to think. Like the period before opening, I'd forgotten. Like when I opened Pie, I was doing 90, 100 hours a week for 6 or 8 weeks before I got my first day off. And I'd forgotten just how draining that is and how poor your brain function is and how forgetful you are. Like it's, the time to go and rob a business owner is when they're 2-3 weeks in, because anything could happen and you just don't remember it. But the graft of going from, finding a property, lease negotiations, fundraising, executing the lease, design work, doing the whole build, finding tradesmen, all that sort of stuff. And in Ireland, because of the housing crisis, every single tradesman in terms of a joiner, tiler, an electrician, a plumber, they're all under lots of pressure and they're being pulled in every direction. So you're just constantly chasing people. But the level of exhaustion I felt when I arrived at day one of the restaurant opening, like I was already fucked, you know? And then to try and keep eyes on everything. So again, I was really lucky with the team I have. Like, I won't say, I was going to say my chefs in particular, but everyone's been great for me. I'm very grateful for that. But they all kind of would have gone out to bat for me from day one, which is, you know, if we were short on something, they would have picked up the weight, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it's funny when we're talking about challenges, what I would say is, this is not this. It's not an answer necessarily for the question you were asking, but I felt really encouraged by the positivity and support of those I spoke to when I wanted to do this. So there is definitely an attitude out there, or not an attitude, but there's a narrative that silly little chef can't do a business without, you know, this person or that person, or you need help. And the reality of it is, you know, you need to be responsible for certain part of the business, like in terms of you need to be really on top of your costs and waste and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, it's challenging and taxing and all that sort of stuff. But the principles are simple. You know what I mean? Quality food, control your costs, like try and generate revenue. That's kind of it, really. But I felt my kind of takeaway when I kind of got the doors open, I was like, I wish more people knew this was possible, because I feel like a lot of people are like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And maybe, you know, maybe they don't necessarily have a concept that'll stick, or maybe they don't want it or any of that stuff. But I feel like a lot of really capable people, and again, it goes back to what I was saying about, you know, I certainly felt stupid in school, even though I was like bright. A lot of people feel like, oh, that's not for me. I couldn't do that. That's only for, you know, this type of person or that type of person. And I certainly was approached by enough people over the years who kind of waving checkbooks, and I'm really glad I held out to do it my own way and have total autonomy and total control, and very positively the support of a bunch of really enthusiastic and excited and generous investors. So yeah.
Awesome.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
One question that we like to ask people towards the end of our interviews is if there's anyone else out there in the food scene, whether they're artisans or producers or other restaurants that you think are doing really incredible things or are at the top of their game.
Oh, you caught me on the fly.
It's okay. We could edit this out also.
Let me think. Well, it's funny, the people who I'm like really inspired by are my actual friends. You know, like you guys know Keith, Scale Bakery. Really excited about what Kuon's doing down in, you know, that's the town that I'm from. It's
Oh,
like
really?
a town of 2,000 people down in the Midlands. And that's where I grew up. But yeah, let me think now. Ryan in Graw Pizza is another cool pizza maker. He's someone I've always kind of respected because he does everything the hard way too. He goes and investigates. That's certainly my perception from the outside looking in. You can tell when he's playing around with something, and doing things the hard way gets better results rather than going online or trying to find out what X, Y, or Z restaurant is doing. And he's over doing a stage in based at the moment. So yeah, that's what I did. I went to Del Popolo in San Francisco, went to Flower Mother, went to, you know, different places to learn.
I guess this is my last question, which is what's on the horizon for you? You know, as far as like what's coming next.
Reggie's on every corner.
Do you want to do do you have other ideas that you want to do, or is this like, are you very happy with one restaurant? Like, we always ask the question, and there's always this assumption that it's like, yeah, well, next up is my wine bar or my bakery or whatever, but it's always just open-ended. Like, what are you thinking?
It's funny. I one of my investors who was a potential investor at the time, and I got the feeling when I was talking to him, because obviously just the nature of the business that he's already involved in, would be that scale would appeal to him. And he was like, so what about scale? What about, you know, Reggie's 2, 3, and 4? And I was like, honestly, it doesn't appeal to me. I just want to do one and do it great. And he was like, fucking brilliant. People ruin everything. They ruin everything. They need to make 10 of them and they ruin them. And I was like, oh, great. But
Pass the Willy Wonka test. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I don't I think I'm fortunate that I'm not terribly greedy. I definitely want more, but I don't want more and more and more. And as I often say, the amount of extra income my wife and my family, let's say, need to be comfortable is not that much. And we don't need a holiday home in the West, and we don't need, a brand new car and any of that stuff. We just want to maybe go on a holiday or two every year and not worry about the gas bill. And that's very achievable with what I have right now. And let's see about the future. I don't, it's not, I would much rather in 5 years' time, someone in New York being, have you heard about Reggie's in Dublin? The way I say it about Roberta's or Lovely's 50/50 or any of these places or folks, rather than having 10 locations. But yeah, I suppose another angle that I say as well is, if I get to 50, I'm 40 now, and I still have one Reggie's and it's brilliant, I'll be very happy. But also, if I maybe had 3 of them by the time I was 50, I wouldn't be miserable. But I don't ever want 10.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't appeal to me. I'm not motivated by it. That said, circumstances could change and someone could offer me a property or something. So it's not never, but it's definitely on the less likely side of things.
Yeah. This was great. You were a very great podcast guest, considering you'd never done it before. So just to let
okay.
You know,
Thanks.
You can, can go into your next interview with confidence.
Because I fucking talk so much, that's why.
Well, you're a perfect guest, exactly.
Well, you're passionate about your craft, and that's
I was trying to explain to people recently, like the idea of getting up at a wedding and giving a best man speech to 150 guests and have everyone laughing is not a stress to me at all. I feel very comfortable with it. But restaurant reviews, I can't read them, even when they're positive. And thankfully they've all been really positive. But it's like, Reggie White is when we close it, and there's something about that kind of attention, I can't handle it. And the truth of it is, I actually haven't. The first 1 or 2, I read them, and then the subsequent ones, I don't know what it is. I just kind of I open the page, I just want to throw the paper away.
Yeah,
and
it's
everyone
tough.
tells me it was good. I'm like, okay, good.
Great.
And
You're
maybe,
someone definitely called you Ireland's pizza king. So I feel like there are worse things that a restaurant critic could call
this
you.
is the problem. 3 different print newspapers use that term, and I was like, stop.
Yeah.
I was like, what does that say to my friends like Shane who owns Bambino or Ryan and Graw or something? And they're saying you just go out for a pint, and they're like, oh, here comes the king. I'm like, no.
We're going to Photoshop a crown onto you when we do the Instagram post for the podcast.
No. My chef brought in the Burger King, the crowns they give you in Burger King, and wrote pizza on it. I enjoy that for a laugh, but I don't enjoy any of those kind of, it's not even like, I feel uncomfortable with that thing. They just kind of like, what the fuck does it even mean? Like, I'm very grateful that they were so kind to me in the thingies, but I don't want to be separated from my peers with any sort of terminology or anything like that. It's gives me the willies.
Yeah,
but
makes it awkward at the pub. It's not worth it.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. At the same time, great that they said it about me, not someone else.
Well, we don't support monarchies anyway, so there's also that.
Well, thanks for your time, and this is a great chat, and we can't wait to come in. We'll have to make it in soon next time we're in town. Dyed Green is a project of Bog and Thunder, whose mission is to highlight the best in Irish food and culture. Join us in Ireland on one of our guided tours in 2025, or contact us to find out more about planning a custom trip just for you.
Find out more at bogandthunder.com. You can listen to our entire archive at dyedgreen.com. Please follow us on your favorite podcast apps and leave us a review if you like the episode.
And if you just can't get enough of Kate's opinions, you can find more of them at katemccabe.substack.com, where she writes regularly. Sign up there and get them delivered to your inbox.